Hello, hi, and welcome to another booktube video. It's been a while. Basically, I've just had some things going on, personal stuff and work, and then I've just been away for a week as well. Yeah, I've been thinking about how much I really want to continue doing kind of what I was doing in terms of this whole booktube journey. Like, I don't necessarily have aspirations to be anything big and massive. But you know, it still takes a bit of work and effort to do these videos. So I'm just going to kind of plod along at my own pace. You know, I'm not going to attempt to try and do videos every week or anything like that. I'm just going to do what I want to do and see how it goes from there. But anyway, this video is all about the Walter Scott Prize for Historical Fiction Shortlist. It's a video I promised that I was going to do. I'm finally getting around to it. The winner for the prize is being announced tomorrow. I finally read all 6 shortlisted books, so here's my thoughts. So first up, I've just got a couple of honorary mentions, books that made the long list but didn't quite make the shortlist, even though I feel that they maybe should have. First up is Victoria Mackenzie, For the Great Pain, Have Mercy on My Little Pain. It's a short book, but it's really interesting, and the prose is quite experimental and unique, and yeah, I just thought it was a lovely little lovely little book. Secondly, and probably more surprisingly for me that didn't make the shortlist, is Cuddy by Benjamin Myers. If you've seen my video on that, you'll know I absolutely loved it. It's kind of split into a number of different parts, uses different prose throughout, very unique, original, which is kind of some of the criteria for the judging for the Walter Scott Prize. And yeah, the writing's fabulous, the stories in it are fabulous, it comes together as a really sort of lyrical masterpiece, if you like, and I was really surprised it didn't make the shortlist. It would have probably been in the running for my winner if it had done, but those are my honorary mentions. So let's get down to my ranking. I want to say before I start, it is my personal opinion. I have no sort of disrespect to the writers at all. To make the long list, let alone the short list, you have to be some sort of fantastic writer, and these are all great writers. The stories maybe didn't resonate with me, all of them, but just like anything, like TVs, movies, music, each sort of genre has its own fans, and there's going to be a fan for every one of these books. So this is just my personal opinion. I don't mean to sort of detract anything from the authors themselves. I have respect for all of them. They're all great writers. It's just my own personal feelings towards the books, so please don't read anything into it. But anyway, here's my ranking. So in 6th place is a book that I just couldn't really get on with, and that is Rose Tremaine, Absolutely and Forever. Yeah, it's a short book anyway, but I feel the story, it's about a young girl, teenage girl, Marianne Clifford, who falls in love with a boy, and she kind of lets that sort of, and the love isn't really returned as she would like it, and then she lets that kind of, that negative experience just play a part of her whole life going forward, her adult life, and it's just, I just feel like, oh, shake yourself, girl, come on, don't let it affect you this way. There was some sort of positives near the end where the character tried to, you know, dust herself off and maybe think, oh, actually I am worth it. And it would have been nice to see a little bit more of Marianne's future going forward. You know, did she write her book? And how did her life turn out? Then it might have been a bit more of an enjoyable story, but yeah, there wasn't much story for me that I enjoyed. It was just a case of a young girl fell in love, the love wasn't returned as she would like, and she just let that kind of rule her life. The writing, however, really good. I enjoyed the writing. It's kind of like accessible literary, so you kind of read it, you understand it, but it kind of makes you feel a bit clever because it is written in a certain way. But overall, yeah, just needed a bit more from the story. It wasn't sort of my cup of tea, but I'm sure it will have its fans. I did read it in under 48 hours, so it wasn't something that I hated. It just didn't resonate with me, maybe. Anyway, and it's nothing personal against the author. I say this probably has its fans, just not my cup of tea. In 5th place, which was a bit of a shock to me because I heard some really good things about this one, once again just didn't really resonate with me, and that was My Father's House by Joseph O'Connor. Yeah, I just think it was the story. I just didn't kind of, didn't really get gripped by it. It was just me. It's told in a number of different narratives. We have The main narrative itself, telling the story of, it's based in Rome, part of it in the Vatican City, and we have a religious man, rector, vicar, anyway, who is based in the Vatican City, and basically it's set in the Second World War period in 1943, and this religious man, as well as a number of other people, are involved in sort of a plot to save escaped prisoners of war. And it's, yeah, told from a number of narratives. You've got the main one, and then you've got different characters. For me, there was parts where I was reading and I just completely forgot whose narrative I was reading. It was like quite confusing for me, and that is probably just a personal thing for me. I mean, other people probably won't have an issue with it. I'm just giving my own personal experience. And yeah, when it came down to it, when it boiled down to it, the actual main story, there wasn't a lot there for me to kind of really get into, and it was a struggle to finish. Once again, my own personal opinion, nothing against it. It's really well written what is there. There's some nice different prose used. It's almost poetic in certain places. I enjoyed the writing in that sense. It's just I wanted a bit more from the story is all. So in fourth place, I have The House of Doors by Tan Twan Eng. This one, so this and my third place were interchangeable. Like I was changing which was third, which was fourth quite a bit in my head. And in the end I had to go with aspects which I enjoyed more. However, I did enjoy the story for this one. It's set over a number of different time periods, but the main part takes place in 1921 in Penang, which is a British, is it a run state or something like that? Anyway, back in those days, obviously, the Brits colonised a lot of places. Anyway, so it tells the story of this famous writer, Willie Somerset Maugham, I think I pronounced that right, Maugham, who goes to stay with an old friend in Penang, and we find out he's kind of in an unhappy marriage, and we soon find out why. And yeah, we see him kind of, at first he goes to stay with this old friend, and the wife and Willie don't really get on at the beginning, and we see them kind of form a little bond to the point where the wife actually tells him a story of her life from 10 years previous in 1911, and how she kind of joined a group which was fighting for Chinese independence. Yeah, so I enjoyed the story, I enjoyed the writing, and yeah, it was, I can't really say anything negative about it. There wasn't nothing negative. It's just I enjoyed the other three books a little bit more. But yeah, the story was, yeah, I thought it was alright. I enjoyed it. I just don't know what else to say. It's set in two main narratives really. We have Willie's narrative, which is third person, and then we have also the wife's narrative, which is first person, and I've forgotten her name, which is really bad of me. Leslie. Sorry, it's been a couple of weeks since I read it. So yeah, so we've got two narratives, Willie's and Leslie's, and it goes back and forth between Willie's experience in 1921 and then Leslie telling her story from 1911. And yeah, it's really interesting sort of twist of the plot. I mean, I get the House of Doors, why it was used, but it wasn't overly used in the novel. Like, if you saw my book on Hungry Ghosts, I said how the title actually played quite a big part in the narrative, and I quite enjoy that. Whereas this, there's an obvious reason why it's used, but it wasn't used that much in the story. But yeah, I enjoyed that. Next up. So my third place is In the Upper Country by Kai Thomas. This is set in 1859 Canada. It's quite an interesting story, but once again was a little bit lacking for me. I just wanted a little bit more from it. However, the thing that made it my third place and not fourth place was the storytelling, especially between the two main characters, Len, Cinder and Cash. The storytelling there, they told each other stories, and at some points I almost felt like I was in the room with them, just like a third wheel sitting in the corner quietly while they were telling each other's stories, and that part I really enjoyed. So 1859 Canada, it's under British rule, so we've abolished slavery, but however slavery is still a thing in the United States. So we see people escaping slavery from the United States going into Canada, and Lencinda lives in this small sort of village where they help these escapees, hide them until they can move them on to somewhere a bit better. And the story starts with someone coming from the US looking for these escapees, and he gets shot by one of the escapees, and the woman, the elderly woman who does the shooting, is taken to prison. And Lencinda, who lives in the village, is like a journalist, and she's asked to go and kind of get her story, you know, to try and almost, because slavery is abolished in Canada because it's under British rule, but there's still some people who are grumbling about, you know, the United States has it. They're still fighting for their cause, and they feel like taking Cash's story could help their cause. But what it turns out is Cash is like, well, you want something from me, but you have to give me a story first. And then they just exchange stories, and it was fascinating. I love the storytelling in those parts. In the main, yeah, it's a good story as well. I just wanted maybe a little bit more from the overall story, but I enjoyed it. It was really nice writing as well. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, I quite enjoyed it, surprisingly. So my second place, I have been racking my mind over my first and second place. I've done videos on both of them, so you probably know which ones they are. However, because this is a personal ranking, I feel I have to do it this way. And my second place, therefore, is Hungry Ghosts by Kevin Jared Hossain. If you saw my video, I absolutely loved it. I love the story, I love the storytelling, the narratives, beautifully descriptive prose, a really hard-hitting, gritty story at times, probably the grittiest out of all 6. There were some emotionally upsetting moments in Hungry Ghosts, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. There's nothing more to say, there's nothing negative I have to say about this book. Set in 1940s Trinidad, we have a story of, well, our main family consists of Hans and Shweta and their son Krishna, and then we also have a richer husband and wife, the Changors, who live in a very nice house on this like hillside almost, whereas Hans and his family live in this poorer area, the barracks, with a number of other families. And we see kind of at the beginning Hans's character, who is quite happy-go-lucky, you know, yeah, he may have a tougher life, but he doesn't let that get in his way, he's very fair. And we see him almost change, and it's the ghosts of his past which are like maybe nipping at his heels, and he completely does a 180 in his character, and he starts off as a character you really admire to a character you kind of get a bit sort of annoyed with. It's quite a sad story towards the end. If you love dogs, you'll probably have a warning there that there's a few things that happen to dogs which are a bit upsetting. But as a whole, it was just, yeah, beautifully written, lovely prose, really interesting deep characters, well thought out plot. I loved it. And that means my first place for the Walter Scott Prize for Historical Fiction shortlist is The New Life by Tom Crew. If you've seen my video on that, it's no surprise to anyone. I have huge personal bias towards this book. It is something that I not only really enjoyed, but something that touched me on a personal level that I really resonated with. The themes of this book, it's about 2 men, one in their 20s, one in their 40s, who come together to write a book on homosexuality in the late Victorian period. Obviously back then it's still something which is very much still illegal. The elder gentleman is a closeted homosexual. The younger one isn't, but he is sort of trained as a doctor, but didn't practice as a doctor, but likes writing, so does a lot of medical writing. And they come together to write this book about how homosexuality maybe isn't something people choose, it's something that they're born with and they can't change. And we see this book trying to be released at the same time as Oscar Wilde trial is happening, which kind of scares one of the authors into thinking, well, you know, this guy's just been found guilty of this, how is this going to affect our personal lives? And we see how that plays out and how it affects the people around them. But yeah, the main themes of it, they really touched me. Yeah, it's something that just reminded me strongly of my childhood, sometimes in a not so great way, but something I have lived through and something that, yeah, just I connected with on another level, and that is why it has to be my number one. So those are my rankings for the Walter Scott Prize for Historical Fiction Shortlist. Now, predicting the winner. Now, as you know, I'm a novice when it comes to reading, so I'm just trying to base it on my own personal feelings, but also taking some of the criteria into account. Some of the criteria being originality, uniqueness, and the writing, you know, quality of writing. In that respect, I'm still surprised Cuddy didn't make the cut, but taking those things into account and trying to take my personal bias out of the situation, I do think both The New Life and Hungry Ghosts would be worthy winners. Knowing me, it probably won't be any of those books, but I have changed my mind a number of times on who I think will win. But I do think it's going to be Hungry Ghosts by Kevin Jarrett Hossain. As I said, I really love this book. To be fair, there's not much in it between this and The New Life in my personal ranking. It's just The New Life has a personal connection. I have a personal connection with it, and that's because of the theme, nothing more. Both well written, both interesting sort of stories, some sort of darkness to them, a little bit gritty. This is more gritty, but yeah, I think taking all the criteria into account and taking out my personal bias, my predicted winner is going to be Hungry Ghosts. We shall see tomorrow. It'll probably be something that I ranked 5th or 6th, no my luck, but that's just my personal opinion. So that is my video on the Walter Scott Prize for Historical Fiction. If you've read any of the books, what did you think? Who do you think is going to win? What did you enjoy the most? And that's it for this video. I have started reading another Dickens, Our Mutual Friend. I'm about a quarter of the way through it, and yeah, I'm loving it so far. It's typical Dickens from what I'm so far acquainted with. You know, we have his unique storytelling style, almost a bit of an odd humour running throughout, the weird interesting characters, his unique prose, the bits where I've mentioned before where he will list nouns or adjectives, not just a few but one after the other after the other. There's plenty of that in there. It's just evidently Dickens, and I'm loving it so far, so hopefully I'll do a book on that at some point. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. Until next time, bye.